We need answers, damn it. Welcome to Watch Mojo UK, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 unresolved cliffhangers in British movies.
And since we find ourselves in need of refreshment, you, sir, have the honour of drawing first blood.
Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. It's one thing when a TV episode ends on a cliffhanger, leaving you eagerly anticipating what will happen next week. But it's another entirely when a standalone movie does it, particularly one with no sequel. For this list, we're going to be counting down the greatest, if most infuriating, unresolved cliffhangers in British film. All of today's entries must boast at least part British production and/or strong British influence, and naturally, as we're discussing how movies end, there are spoilers ahead. Number 10, Snatch.
He loves that dog. Always playing silly games.
After a series of thefts, double-crossing, and shootouts, protagonists Turkish and Tommy end up in possession of a very valuable diamond, after finding it inside a dog nonetheless.
The vet found half an undigested shoe, a squeaky toy, and an 84-carat diamond lodged in its stomach. It's quite amazing what can happen in a week.
So the story ends with them taking it to diamond dealer Doug, who consults New York jeweler cousin Avi. But there's a twist, because Avi had the diamond in his possession earlier before it was stolen from him.
Do you know anyone who'd be interested?
How will he react to Turkish and Tommy now having hold of it? We'll never know, because that's just when Snatch cuts to the credits. Number 9, The Grey. A movie that was pretty well promoted as Liam Neeson vs. Wolves ends just as Neeson is about to fight a wolf. It doesn't get much more frustrating than that. Even so, the atmospheric ending to this movie, part produced by Ridley Scott, does conjure up one vital question: who won? There's a cheeky post-credits scene glimpsing at the fallout of the battle, but it's still not made completely clear who survived and who didn't, and we never actually get to see Neeson put his very particular set of skills to use. Number 8, The World's End. Despite being the final installment of Edgar Wright's Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy, The World's End leaves audiences still wanting more.
Because real happiness, real friends, those are things worth living for.
Amidst the post-apocalyptic landscape that's left in the wake of the film's climax, Gary King and his motley crew of androids run into trouble at a pub when the bartender refuses to serve them.
You can have one, but I ain't serving this scum.
And just as a massive brawl is set to erupt between the pub regulars and King's robotic pals, the credits roll and we're again left wondering who wins. And did Gary ever get that drink?
Who the hell do you think you are?
Me? They call me the King.
Number 7, Get Carter. Michael Caine's Jack Carter spends the duration of this film ruthlessly avenging his brother's death, only to be sniped in the head come the movie's conclusion. The moral of the story we're left to infer is that violence and death aren't the solution, and if anything only leads to more violence and death. But just who exactly is the mystery hitman who pulls the trigger on Jack? It isn't the first time we see him, and yet we know little to nothing about him. Number 6, HighRise. Director Ben Wheatley is no stranger to offering up morbid and sinister storylines, and HighRise is no exception. Dr. Robert Lang moves into a London skyscraper which eventually descends into carnage as rising tensions and class warfare reach boiling point.
Lang's got someone waiting. You know how it is.
By the final moments, complete anarchy reigns supreme, with most of the HighRise in ruins and Robert on the edge of his sanity.
For now, I would sit back eat the rest of the dog and wait for failure to reach the second tower of the high-rise development.
And so, we close out with Lang somewhat ambiguously suggesting that it's only a matter of time until another tower block suffers the same fate.
Who are you talking to?
No one. Just the building.
Number 5 in Bruges. After a suitably climactic showdown to this cult favourite crime caper, the black comedy in Bruges leaves us guessing as to whether the movie's main character has survived or not.
The little boy. That's right, Ray. The little boy.
As Colin Farrell's Ray gets loaded into an ambulance after being shot by the bad guy, we briefly find out what he really thinks thanks to a heartfelt inner monologue.
Prison. Death. Didn't matter. Because at least in prison and at least in death, you know, I wouldn't be in f***ing Bruges.
But though Ray says that he really hopes he won't die, we'll never know for sure if his prayers are answered.
I really, really hoped I wouldn't die.
Number 4, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. Clearly, Guy Ritchie loves an ambiguous ending, as Lock, Stock follows Snatch onto this list.
Put your seatbelt on. We're out.
Despite a series of heists, Eddie, Tom, Soap and Bacon end up with nothing to show for their troubles. However, the only bits of evidence linking them to their crimes are 2 antique shotguns and Tom's task with disposing of them. But just at the pivotal moment, the friends learn that the guns are of immense value.
What's his number?
Does Tom take the call, or are the guns no more? Who knows? Number 3, Inception. Well, this one really was infuriating.
Welcome home, Mr. Cobb.
Dealing with characters entering into dreams to extract secrets from the dreamer, it's easy for our heroes to get lost outside of reality and forget if they're still in a dream or not. So this ending's a real kicker as Dominic returns home and uses his totem.
Look who's here.
We know that the spinning top tips over in the real world, but keeps on spinning if you're stuck in a dream state. But we're denied the conclusive outcome for this final scene, or are we? Number 2, 28 weeks later. First, there was 28 days later, followed by 28 weeks later, which seemingly teased 28 months later. But at the rate things are moving, 28 years later might be a more likely part 3.
Get in.
Come on!
What makes things even more frustrating is the way in which 28 weeks later ends, with the survivors making it to Paris only to be swarmed by another herd of hellish, sprinting, continental zombies. Who doesn't want to see how that plays out? Hopefully we'll get a final chapter of this trilogy sometime soon. Number 1, The Italian Job. The classic cliffhanger ending that literally ends on the edge of a cliff. After a successful heist, the driver, Big William, loses control of the coach, which is being used to transport the stolen gold, and the vehicle ends up teetering on the edge of a mountain road in the Alps.
The gold is pulling it over the edge. We'll have to get it back.
And as the heavy gold slips towards the back of the coach, Charlie Crocker announces,
Hang on a minute, lads. I've got a great idea.
We'll just never get to see what his great idea was, or if it worked.
This is the Self-Preservation Society.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo UK and subscribe for more great content.